assume they're fine.
Well, they did. I've been here for about 45 minutes,
Oh, okay.
so they did seem to be going around checking a whole bunch of things.
Did they check the mics?
I think so.
Thank you for coming. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the continuation of the 75th anniversary of the right for women to vote in the United States, the actual ratification of the 19th Amendment, of the 81st anniversary of the right for women to vote in the state of Nevada. We had received the right to vote. That's not really quite the right word. People say they gave women the vote in 1914. No way. It was a lot more than women being given the vote. They gained the right to vote through some of the words you heard tonight in 1914 in the state of Nevada. And also the 75th anniversary of the UNLV Study Club, the 75th anniversary of the YWCA in Reno. So this really was a benchmark year in American history when people all over the country became aware of the role that women played and could play. Carrie Chapman Catt was the person who had the vision that after ratification there needed to be organization to help women learn how to use the vote wisely. And out of that came the League of Women Voters, which we will talk about tonight. Before we get into the presentation, which is going to be kind of short and snappy and lots of comments for you to ponder, I want to have join me up here Ellen Rose, Dr. Ellen Rose, the head of the Women's Studies program at the university that is co-sponsoring this part of the evening tonight.
On behalf of the Women's Studies program at UNLV, I want to join Dean in welcoming you here tonight. We in the Women's Studies program are delighted to be co-sponsoring this event. For those of you who may not know what a Women's Studies program is, we are an academic programming offering students a broad interdisciplinary understanding of the way gender interacts with race, class, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, to create human consciousness and the social, political, and cultural organization of human society throughout history. We currently have about 12 majors in women's studies and a number of minors. It's a young program, but it's growing rapidly. We have participating faculty from about 8 different departments on campus, offering a range of about 18 courses, ranging from courses in anthropology, history, English, sociology, to places where you might not expect to find women's studies courses being offered, like criminal justice and geoscience. I'm delighted that you're here, and I'm delighted that we're going to have the opportunity tonight to learn some of the ways in which women have been public leaders, and also public leaders in spheres customarily thought of as private spheres. In fact, women's studies helps us understand how the distinction between the public domestic sphere and the private domestic sphere and the public political sphere, if you will, that's a distinction that we need to collapse, to deconstruct in what is currently a very fashionable word. So without more palaver from me, I'd like to turn the proceedings back to Jean and our distinguished panel. Thank you all for coming.
There are many others that we could recognize. I'm not going to take the time to do that tonight in the essence of wanting to move on to the topic at hand, but we do have members of the faculty here. We have members of the community, members of the League and other women's organizations, members of political parties, members of community organizations that care about our state and our community, and we appreciate all of you for coming. I'd like to introduce to you what I think is a wonderful group, and I wish this was the beginning of a weekend where we could spend the time together. The first is Elsie Lavonne Lewis, who has been active in the League of Women Voters on the Nevada Humanities Committee and in her own right is a Human Resource Department Manager for REECo. Next to her is Rozita Lee, and she has been in this community for a number of years, has been involved in media, in communications both on campus and in the community. She is currently president of the Women's Democratic Club, but has a long list of other activities that she's been in. Next, we have Dorothy Eisenberg, whom you may have met earlier and who is truly one of the pioneers of the League in Nevada. She has been active for many years, president of the League, both at the local and state level, well known for her civic leadership in southern Nevada, including having a school named for her that is a little bit of honor for the things she's done. The next person is Sandy Metcalf, who also was in the League and still is, but was both the local and the state president at one time, and is a teacher in the Clark County schools. And last is our Attorney General, Frankie Del Papa, who has, I don't think, ever actually belonged to the League, but we know has interacted with the League throughout her life and career in the state, and who could bring us another person's view as one who has observed and also been the recipient of some of the League's activity. So we have people who have been in the League and have not been in the League, people who are in the community. Actually, all of them are very much a part of community. And so with that, let us move to the topic that we would like to talk about for a few moments. We're really looking back at really what is the significance of women getting the right to vote, the work they did. Why did they work so hard? What did they think was going to happen? A young student came to me not long ago. We had a documentary on this in northern Nevada put together by our public television there, which will be played down here, I hope, soon. And after it, this student came to me and said, I feel so guilty. I didn't vote in the last election. And she realized that what it had taken, and there was the wonderful PBS thing about Susan B. Anthony's life, which I hope was shown down here not too long ago. And she said, I can't believe how much women, what they worked in order to make this happen. And this is one of the reasons we need to keep the stories alive, is for the young people coming along. This picture gives us a little bit of a really defining moment in Nevada history when the legislature met in a special session and was the 28th to ratify the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And one of the things we're going to do for a moment is look back and talk about what have women done with that vote. Each of the panelists is going to share with you just a few moments from their own personal experience and their own observations the answer to that question. Let's start with Frankie Sue and work our way down the line.
Well, thank you, Jean, and good evening, everyone. The first story that I'd sort of like to share with you to set the tone is years ago, 1974, 75, thereabouts. I had gone to Fallon one night to debate then Senator Carl Dodge on the Equal Rights Amendment. And we'd had it was an interesting evening. The AAUW and I think the League had sponsored, this type of event, and a huge turnout for Fallon that evening, many people. And we debated back and forth. And but the person who stole the show, and many of you in this room remember Cecily Jacobson, who's been so active so long in a lot of different issues in Nevada. Her father, all dressed in black with the long gray beard, raised his hand and said to Carl, with all due respect, the arguments that I hear you giving tonight against the Equal Rights Amendment are the same arguments that I heard as a young man against giving women the right to vote. Absolutely stole the show, brought down the House. I mean, what else could you say, certainly in answering that? I would say to you that obviously, as an elected official and one who's had the honor of serving in a lot of offices, 2 constitutional offices, which I was the first woman to serve in, I would just say that, it sort of took us a long time to even get there, but obviously without the right to vote, we would have lost out on a tremendous amount of public service, a tremendous amount of dedication, commitment, from an electoral standpoint. And I can just tell you that it is so important to have women's voices at the table where these decisions are being made. And clearly, all of us in this room could give examples of that. Interestingly enough, one day when I was Secretary of State, a young staff member of mine it was like a summer employee or something. She came into the room and she was so serious. And she said to me, she said, "Frankie Sue, I can't believe it. Someone just said to me that women haven't always had the right to vote. Tell me that it isn't true." And so when Jean speaks in terms of why it's important to share stories, I mean, and to sort of keep this alive, you know, there are some people who, for whatever reason, just would take a lot of things for granted. The fact that we've always had them, and in fact, we're always going to have them. And certainly when we move to the second part of the program about where do we go from here, some of these rights are certainly possibly in jeopardy. And so you see that it is a never-ending process. It is one that obviously we all learn from. I would just share with you one other story. When I was in law school, I worked for Senator Alan Bible, and I was the first woman that had gone through law school under his patronage. And I worked in his office, and my third-year law school project, which he was very supportive in, was in saving what is called the Sewell Belmont House. And that was the place where the Women's Suffrage Party and Alice Paul lived. And it was a very historic house. When you go to D.C. and you see the Hart Senate Office Building, which is the newest Senate Office Building, it's the little brick house that's on the corner there at First and Constitution. And they were going to destroy that house when the architects of the Capitol wanted to when they leveled that whole block to build the new Senate Office Building. And a number of us rallied to save it. But it was my project, and so I got to testify in Congress on that project, and I will tell you that it was just tremendous, and I had the pleasure of staying 1 month there the summer of '74, and I slept in Alice Paul's bedroom. And if you ever go back there, you should see the memorabilia there, because they have the flags that the suffragettes used when the marches in D.C., and they have there's a pin that I have. It's the little pin with the jailhouse door, which was, of course, their symbol. But tremendous history there, and it was a project that I'm really proud of. But certainly I would just, and we could go on, and the evening is a time where I think a number of us have a number of things to share with you. But certainly, I, for one, would like to thank those who came behind me, because my philosophy has always been that, you know, you should change the things that you should change. And I think that certainly when we talk about the women's movement, and particularly when we talk about the right to vote and when we talk about the League, these are people who have stood up for justice and who have tried to change things for those who are coming after them. And I certainly applaud all of your efforts here and your presence here tonight. That says a lot about who you are.
Let's go on with Sandy.
Well, thanks, Jean, for inviting me. I have to tell you that some of my memories come, like Frankie Sue's, with the Equal Rights Amendment. I was the chairman of the Equal Rights Amendment battle, and there's no other word for it, in Arizona, and found it fascinating. I think I must have been incredibly young and incredibly naive, because I really believe that people of goodwill coming together would understand that it's kind of like the right to vote, equality. They didn't think the way I did. I was personally threatened. My family was threatened. It was really a very horrifying experience, but it's kind of one of those where you sit down with your family and decide that the fight is worth it. And those kinds of things, I think, I got a questionnaire recently from the League in Arizona asking me if I would reminisce, and I have to tell you that it was almost scary to go back and think about some of those things. And I hope that we don't have to go through those battles again. I know we will. As a longtime leaguer, I know that the issues are always there. A friend of mine, Deanne Stout, and I were just looking at some of the League publications that are there. We need to revisit them again. Teenagers in trouble. As Dorothy knows, we need to look at our schools. All of these things are issues that the League has worked on, and I've been a leaguer, I think, forever. And so I've worked on many of these issues, and I have to tell you that the people issues are the ones that are my ball game, I guess, because I seem to be drawn to them. But I think, like Frankie Sue, we owe so much to those women who were so brave and stood up for what they believed in and allowed some of us to come later and have the same experiences and hopefully try to make it better for our daughters and for some of us who are still waiting for grandchildren. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you very much. Dorothy Eisenberg.
I want you to know that when I knew I was going to be on the panel tonight, it meant a lot to me. I have written and rewritten what I'm supposed to say about 4 or 5 different times. First of all, there is just so much to say, and I know I can't say it all. So you'll excuse me if I give you, from my point of view and my history, what this all means to me. I have been reading a lot about the suffragette movement and the women that were involved, and I am incredulous at the kind of things that they went through. I don't think that enough of us know what these women went through, and they had to come to men to plead, to persuade, to ask them to be allowed to vote. And it was a very moving experience for me. And as I was reading, I felt something about this 1920, and I realized this was the year that my mother came to this country from Russia. She was 12 years old. She came with her sister, who was 14. The two of them traveled alone to this country. My father had come the year before, unknowns to her. He was from Austria. But the proudest thing in my house, my parents, were their citizenship papers. I'm a first-generation American, and I grew up knowing what a wonderful country this was and how blessed we were. I also grew up in Philadelphia, which was the cradle of this country. I walked down the street, and right down the street was the Liberty Bell. Not far from that was Betsy Ross's home. We were surrounded by memorabilia of Ben Franklin, and high atop the City Hall was William Penn. And it was wonderful to grow up there. We had an insurance company called the John Hancock Insurance Company, and they would have in their office little profiles of presidents and of people who signed the Constitution. And I used to collect them like baseball cards. I thought they were just wonderful, and I always collected them. Well, this meant that I got involved in politics very young. And Philadelphia was a great place to learn politics because this was ward politics at its best and worst. And I got a very, very good education. But I was a very sheltered person, and I think that went along with the times that I grew up in. I was a child during the Depression, and I graduated all through my high school. World War II was going on. And so that I went from my father's house to my husband's house. I never went to college. I never worked. I just got married and had lots of children. Fact is, I had 4 daughters rapidly, and I thought life was going on the way it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, my husband died, and I was left suddenly to realize that I did not have an education. I did not have any credit. He had been in a business, and because I was a woman, I was pushed out of the business, so I had no way to make a living. And here I was, all alone. I went to purchase a car because I did not have a car at the time, and I couldn't get a car salesman to deal with me in an objective way, and I had to go get my brother to get the best price on the car. And I suddenly realized that I had a lot to learn about the world out there. It wasn't that long ago, but it was a long time ago in terms of what women were expected to do. I decided that I should plan for the long run, and I started college when I was 33, at a time when most women did not start college older. And I think the worst time was having to take PE with all the kids. But I did it. And I graduated, and it was one of the proudest things in my life was to graduate college. I met my present husband, and he was also from Philadelphia, and we decided to move here. And Las Vegas was a big shock coming from a cosmopolitan city like Philadelphia in 1964. It was still a very small town. The fact is there are more students in Clark County schools now than there were people in this valley. So we settled in, and I was going to get involved in politics, right? And I went to my first precinct meeting, and who was there but our Congressman Walter Bering, who proceeded to tell me in no uncertain terms that I really did not belong in the party. Anyone who knows Walter Bering knows that he was a very conservative Democrat, and I think that he thought that I was a little bit over the line there. So I saw something in the newspaper about the League of Women Voters and said, that's the place for me, because I really don't know this town. And they showed me that I didn't, so that the League was the place for me to learn. And I did learn. We had wonderful times. We had unit meetings, which meant we shared ideas. Everybody got a chance to chair things, to research things, to take part in different activities. And it was a wonderful learning experience for all of us, not just me, everybody that was involved. We went to those meetings and we chimed in and we reached consensus. It took a long time sometimes, but we worked at it and we reached a consensus to have an opinion. And then we could go out and tell what our opinion was and how we reached it and why we reached it, the kind of research that we did, publish all those materials that you see upstairs. I look at them and they're really kind of tacky looking because nobody put any money in them. We didn't even Xerox them. We ran them off on these mimeograph machines. I remember being covered with ink, running these things off. But the work in them, the research, the women worked so hard. The work in them was fabulous. The great pride it gave us. I was very shy when I came. And I was sent down to make a statement at the city commission, the county commission. I never thought I could do it. But then I was not Dorothy Eisenberg. I was the League of Women Voters. And that allowed me to do it. And that's the difference in how you grow and how you do it, because you have an organization like the League backing you up. I must say that Jean Ford was a wonderful inspiration to all of us. I think that all over the state, we should be thankful to Jean because of the wonderful job she's done, and I'm not finished yet.
No, but I'm about to tell you, time is up.
Well, I want to say a little bit more.
Okay.
We learned to raise money, too. And that was a real eye-opener, to go to people and ask them for money for the League, because we did need it. But this showed us that women could raise money, and women could do a lot of the things that this led to: running for office, being involved in activities, and spreading out to be nominated, elected, and to be on the various boards and commissions that were all over this Las Vegas Valley and the state. And I guess I have to finish.
Let's give a hand for those that have come so far. Here, great. Thank you. Let's go to Rozita Lee now.
Well, I do want to thank Jean for this opportunity and for the committee in giving me this opportunity to speak. I am not a member of the Women's League, but I have been active in the community, and I can only tell you about my experiences as a person in the community. We have a large Asian contingency here in Las Vegas now. When I first came back in 1979, there weren't as many Asians. There weren't as many Asians participating in the electoral process. But now we have a strong number of Asians. And so I can speak to you from that perspective, because as the League of Women Voters strive to do is to get people out to vote, no matter whether they are Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians. And as a citizen of the United States, I was given that privilege to vote because I was born here. My parents came from the Philippines. They had to study, they had to go to class to become a citizen of the United States. I grew up in a plantation town, Lahaina, Maui, Hawaii. My father was politically inclined. He was the camp boss. And because of that, he was the leader. And I learned a lot of things from my father. How to get people to go out and take active participation in the community activities. Then when I grew up, I realized that that wasn't all that there is, because we have to work first from within ourselves, then our families, and then our communities, and then our cities, and then our states to make things happen. And when I moved here and got married to Cliff, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing because I hadn't been in school for quite a while, but I decided to come here to UNLV, and I got my degree, finished school and got my degree, and became involved in the community. And the best thing, one of the best things that I did was to get involved in the Rebel at that time, the newspaper, because that gave you, it opened doors, and it certainly opened doors for me. And then when I became involved with Channel 10, then I saw the need for the community to learn more about the different ethnic groups. Lots of people were moving into Las Vegas from China, from Japan, from the Philippines, from Hawaii, from Vietnam. And so with the program that we conceived, Spectrum, we were able to present the ideas and to present the cultures through song and dance, through food, of all of these ethnic groups that came. I never was involved politically here in Nevada. I was in Hawaii, and that's where I got my first taste of politics, my first taste of what can happen if a group of people were to work together to get this person and that person and this one elected. It worked. It worked back home. So when I saw this opportunity to help in getting that process done for someone who had appointed me to his office to work with him, I decided then that I was going to help this gentleman. And with the help of Dr. Locke, we were able together to bring together all of the, or many of the Asian leaders to work together to get Governor Miller elected. This had never been done before in the Asian community. And it was wonderful to see the process working because of the things that have happened in the past. You know, we know that women, especially Asian women, are subservient. We come, you know, with things in our background that tells us, well, we're not supposed to do this, we're not supposed to do that, because we are women. And I knew that from my upbringing. My father was a dominant force, and mother did not go out to work. She was at home taking care of all of her girls. There were 7 of us. And I was the youngest. And but she worked. She washed clothes for the men in the village, you know, Kiabi camp that we had. That was her way of earning money. She also had boarders. People came to eat, you know, breakfast and then dinner. But I saw that in the past. I don't want to see that happen again, currently or in the future. But, you know, I know that we have come a long way, as they say. There are laws that recognize women's social contributions and offer a degree of protection against inequality and abuse. And more women have really broken the glass ceiling in business, in politics, and in arts. But despite the American women's civil rights victories, racism prevents the full enjoyment of these gains by women of color. and I am a woman of color. Our society is broken up into different levels based on economic income, education, politics, color, and sex. And yet, within each level, there are certain sets of rules for action and interplay. And at the very bottom of these varying gradations are women of color. Asian women have been stereotyped as being docile, submissive, who will cater to the whims of man. And two, they're the Susie Wong type, sexy, exotic. And then between these two, there's the very efficient secretary, the sexy stewardess, and the good housekeeper and domestic. And according to the Civil Rights Commission, Asian Americans have a tough time reaching high decision-making positions. Unfair stereotypes of Asian Americans make the corporate glass ceiling very real. But there are people who have broken through that, women who have made it into top leadership positions and have had to reject the stereotypes already imposed upon them. And I'd like to name a few. There's Alice Bulos. She's a Filipina. She was appointed to the U.S. Commission on Aging, which enables her to serve all seniors in America. And then there's Patsy Takimoto Mink. She was elected representative to Congress from Hawaii. In the House, she is a consistent supporter of women's rights bills, equal pay, and child care. Then there's Maria Luisa Mailang Haley, Special Assistant to President Clinton and Associate Director of White House Personnel. And she has always campaigned for Asian American participation in the electoral process. And there's Louida Nicholas Lewis, a former attorney for the Immigration and Naturalization Service. And she is the chairman of one of the largest corporations, the TLC Beatrice International Holdings. She helped establish the Asian American Legal Defense Fund in New York. She chairs the Reginald Lewis Foundation, which has given an estimated $12 million to various causes. Then there's Irene Natividad. She's a former president of the National Political Caucus for Women and is currently the chairman of the National Commission on Working Women. And she's always pushing for Asian Americans to vote and to run for office to gain a powerful political force. There's Gloria Ochoa, Lorelei Elias. She's a councilman of City of Carson. There's Vilma Villoria. And we can't forget our very own Lily Fong. She strived hard and she became a regent here for 10 years. It wasn't easy for Lily to get the votes, but she did. And she has been a shining example for me. And then, of course, Cheryl Lau, who became the Secretary of State. But then I go back again to Governor Miller. What did we do that made it possible for us to help him regain and become the governor of Nevada? We got together a group of citizens, and they are the Asian leaders of Nevada. And with their help and the members in their organizations, we were able to get out the vote. And that is what is so important, is getting out the vote. We continue to work for protective measures against gender discrimination, against sexual harassment and domestic violence. We are becoming more assertive of our rights and our worth. We are fortunate to have women, as you have here on the panel, but I do want to mention a woman like Doris Feminella, who was vital in helping to get the voter registration done in the casinos. She worked very closely with Bobby Baldwin and Steve Wynn. And right now, I'm sure many of you have read in the paper how Steve Wynn has his people in the casinos all registered, or most of them registered to vote. But it's people like Doris, like Dorothy, Jean, who makes this possible. I am new, fairly new in the community of politics, but I know that if we continue to work diligently, we can be a force in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Lavonne Lewis.
Thank you very much, Jean. I was very honored to be invited to speak on this panel. And when I thought about the question of what have women done with the vote since 1920, I really had to think, what has America done with the vote since 1920? There are times when I feel that nobody should be allowed to vote, that the country should be ruled by an enlightened oligarchy, which includes me and 4 of my friends who I picked. But recognizing that that is not possible, probably, and not desirable either, even though I don't know. I never miss a chance to vote because voting has some particular significance to me. While my ancestors, I am not a first-generation American, I am not a second-generation American, I am not a third-generation American. I am a 20th-generation American, I think, as I trace my family tree back, but voting was not possible for me, you know, until the 60s because of the barriers that were in place in the areas where I grew up that did not allow me to vote since I grew up in Arkansas. I was able to vote prior to the 60s since I left Arkansas prior to 1960, but my parents and my grandparents that lived there could not vote. Could not vote because of poll tax, could not vote because of a number of the other barriers that were in place at that time that deprived me of the right to vote. So being a Black American as well as a woman, voting has some particular significance. And I try to impress upon my children all the time when I call them on election day that whether there is, and I do invariably call early to say, have you voted yet? You know, who's running? What is the election? Well, there's a dog catcher and there are 3 other things. But anyway, you always vote. You must vote all the time. Whatever the election happens to be, you must vote because some of my ancestors and some of my friends' ancestors and families died so that we could vote in areas like Mississippi and Georgia and some of the other places in this country, not abroad, so that we would be able to vote. So voting is very significant for me, and being active and participating in the community is very significant. And when I moved to Las Vegas, well, first when I moved to Los Alamos, New Mexico, after getting married and crying all the way over the hills, I moved from New York City to Los Alamos, New Mexico. And if you've ever driven through Tucumcari and after being denied a place to stay in Oklahoma and some other things that happened, by the time I got to Los Alamos and looked at that the road to Los Alamos, that really desolate, barren area, I just thought, oh, this is impossible, and I just cried forever. You know, I knew that Clement and Benner, which was a local department store, was certainly not Saks Fifth Avenue. So, but I moved to Las Vegas, and moved to Los Alamos, and they were in the middle of a fair housing situation there. They had 8 Black families in Los Alamos, New Mexico at that time. They had a population of about 13,000, but there was some concern that they may be forced. Had no control over where anybody lived in Los Alamos. The whole town was owned by the government, and you were assigned houses based on what you earned. If you earned $1,000 a month, you got 1,000 points, and you were assigned a house on that basis. But there was some concern about the people in Los Alamos about being forced to rent or to sell to anybody. They didn't own any houses, except in a small area called Barranca Mesa, but it was an issue. And the League of Women Voters had done a study, and their study showed that housing should be offered to people on a non-discriminatory basis, and that was. So I joined the League of Women Voters in Los Alamos and found that it was a very good avenue to learn what was going on in a community, to learn what the issues were in a particular community, and to be able to have a voice in what happened in that community. I moved from Los Alamos to Palos Verdes, California, it seems that I had a penchant for moving to these areas where there were very few black families for some reason. I don't know how. There were 5 in Palos Verdes. And we happened to find a woman who had a sign on her door that said, "We believe in fair housing," and we bought her house. So, because she was moving to another one and she was willing to sell it to us. And the lady across the street, who was one of the few people in the neighborhood to stop by and say that we appreciate having you in the community, and as neighbors, the rest of the people threw dead snakes in our yard. But we did, she also took me to the League of Women Voters, and we worked on league issues in that area. And then I moved to Las Vegas after coming over here and saying, never in life will I ever move to that place. It is the Mississippi of the West, and I want nothing to do with it. A few months later, we were moving to Las Vegas, where it was extremely warm. And everybody said, oh, the summers aren't usually like, well, the first winter we moved here in February and it was very rainy. And they said, oh, it's not like this. This is unusual. And they were in the middle of a school desegregation fight. Because it was determined that the only neighborhood schools in Las Vegas were located on the west side. That was the only place in town where people could walk to school. There's this hue and cry now. I hear about neighborhood schools. Those were the only ones they had, and they were all black schools. So, and they were inferior schools. They were not inferior because they were black schools. They were inferior because the school district had neglected them to such a degree that, and they had discriminated to such a degree that those schools were indeed inferior. They had inferior plants. They had very good teachers, but they had very, very few materials. And so the League got involved with the NAACP as an amicus to work with them in helping to try to end school desegregation in Las Vegas. We proposed some very interesting methods of desegregating the schools in Las Vegas. We proposed magnet schools. We proposed pairing of schools. We talked about many of the mechanisms that the school district has now discovered and found, oh, these are great ways to desegregate the schools. The school district's plan was the 6th grade center plan, which was in existence here for a number of years. And we went through a court case here in Las Vegas and an appeal in San Francisco and spent many, many, many days and nights poring over the school district budget, and we finally made sense out of that to say that there was money to be able to desegregate the schools, and they did have some money to buy some buses, and the League of Women Voters was very prominent in working on that. As I look back on it, I'm not real sure that it was a victory, but we certainly worked very hard to try to provide a quality education for all of the children in the Clark County School District, because it was apparent that that was not happening at the time that we were involved in that particular issue. I also spent an awful lot of time working with the League on a lot of other issues, employment in Las Vegas, and when I moved here, the only jobs that blacks had on the Strip was maid and porter. If you were either a maid or you were a porter, you did not have any of the jobs that paid much money. You could not be a cocktail waitress where you made a lot of money, you know, in tips. You could not be a dealer. You could not park cars. You could not work on the front desk in hotels. And the League did a study. As a matter of fact, I found an old document. It says, "Dear friends," and I really mean that, "thanks so much for volunteering your time to be discussion leaders for the League units." And there again, we were talking, this is dated September 18th, 1973. But the League did a study, looked at the employment issues in Las Vegas, and then published a document And then we worked to try to change that. There was some activity with the consent decree that was signed by the hotels here in the 1970s, which said that the 12% of the jobs in the hotels at all levels had to go to blacks. It was later changed to go to minorities, but it was blacks at the time because the blacks in Las Vegas had no jobs. And the league worked to change that. We spent an awful lot of time in working on the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, and the League of Women Voters, along with a few of the coalitions, worked in that area. But I feel that I cherish my right to vote, and I cherish my right to vote as an informed voter. And I think I have been able to do that over the years because of my participation and because of the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Thank you. At the time we planned what we were going to do tonight, I thought it would be good if we could illustrate for you some of the roles that women have played since 1920, since they got the vote. I truly have heard those roles described by all of our panelists. Serving in political parties, helping organize community organizations, observing at meetings, learning how to chair meetings, make speeches, being involved in appointed boards and commissions, running for office, and sometimes winning, sometimes losing. All of those are some of the different roles that we have learned that we can play, those and many more. As a close to this part of the program, then we're going to have a short kind of where do we go from here. We asked the members of the League, when we sent them their invitation to tonight, to write down a memory and to send it in. And we had about 8 people who did that, and I'm not going to read them all, but I wanted to recognize that they did take the time to do that. Pat Van Betten, Ethel Trioni, Eva Simmons, Kate Butler, Annette Goldstein, Rosemary Lynch, and Emily Wanderer. I have their comments here. I want to share with you briefly 2 of them. Pat Van Betten said she had a lot of things to say, but she particularly reminisced. One of my fondest memories is a meeting with a lot of League members many years ago, and we were brainstorming ways to raise money. We, who it seemed were never home, laughed as we talked about maybe putting together a cookbook. We laughed most, though, when Jan McCachran, God love her, said we could write a cookbook and call it What to Feed Your Family After You've Been Out to Lunch. Or after you've been to a League meeting. That's what she really meant. And then the letter from Eva, who would have been with us, but she's representing the Clark County School District tonight at a convention. She says, I remember carting my new baby girl with me to conduct interviews with school principals as part of the League's desegregation study. I remember attending many loud and angry school board meetings. I still do, but now she's on the other side of the table part of the time. And I remember being stopped by a sheriff's deputy and being asked why I was on that side of town, Eastern and Flamingo, late at night. These things, this is true life. This is people's lives and things that have happened to them in this community over the last 20 years, 30 years. It's getting late, and we do want to wind this up at a reasonable time. And so we are going to have one other short opportunity for everybody to speak. And this is really kind of looking ahead. We've done some reminiscing tonight, some nostalgia time. But it's a very serious time to examine, yes, we have done many things with the vote, but where are we going for the future? And so I'd like for each of our panelists to bring this meeting to a close with a couple of hints to you on what they see. What can we do to create community? What can we do to help empower everyone to have the vote? What does our future hold for women and for the community at large? Let's start with Lavonne and work our way down the other way. Is that okay with you?
Sure, that's fine. I'm not very
Okay.
optimistic. So it may be because my company is going away and the test site's closing down. But I'm really not, I don't really know what the future holds. I'm feeling very concerned. I have some real concerns about what we're doing with the vote. And so when I stated, you know, I think that probably for me anyway, and in terms of thinking of what will happen, I think things will get worse before they get better, but perhaps the pendulum will swing the other way. I am very concerned that we are becoming more mean-spirited with our vote, and that the people who we have put in power are very mean-spirited in some cases in their thought processes. So that bothers me. I am very distressed by what I perceive to be the tone of the nation. I look at the discussions about affirmative action, and perhaps we've gone too far, and I look at the level of minority income compared to the level of white income, which has decreased in the last 20 years, and I keep saying, well, you know, people are saying affirmative action. Who got these jobs? Where you know, how do you come to the conclusion that something is happening here that is taking jobs away from some majority group when, you know, the income levels don't reflect that at all? Or the enrollments in the universities do not reflect that. Minorities are getting those positions. It should be going to whites. It doesn't show up. So I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about what we perceive as being the truth, and then voting based on that perception, and what is really the truth. You know, I'm very concerned about what we're going to do with our vote in the future.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting, Lavonne, that you would say that about, you know, being confused about where the vote is going. I think this is a time now when we, and I'm speaking specifically, we women, have an opportunity to make things happen, to make the changes that need to be done, and that is to get down to the grassroots level. I think in the past few years and few elections, we've lost that. But we have realized that it is because of grassroots level working that has made it possible for people to be elected. But then what are the things that we're going to elect them for? I mean, they're representing us, but they're making such a big thing now about I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican. The bipartisan thing is getting into the picture, I think, and also getting in the way of where we as Americans should be going. And I think because we as women have that ability to speak to our families and our communities, that we should take advantage of that and meet one-on-one, meet in small groups, and work towards getting the ideas out. So many of us, and I'm talking now specifically of us Asian women, are quiet. We don't want to speak up because we're brought up not to speak up. I know I had the hardest time to raise my hand in class because of that. You know, you don't speak out. You have to just listen to what your superior has to say. I always had to say, Mr. So-and-so, or, you know, and address them. I could never call, or had a very difficult time calling people by their first names who were older than I. But I have learned through living that, you know, it's okay to call someone who's older than you by the first name. But these are things, and these are barriers that we can educate our people to overcome so that they can speak up, they can express their feelings. And yes, it is scary because of who have been voted into office and what they're saying and what they're doing. But you know, we voted them into office. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to support them. We're going to have to talk to them. We're going to have to write the letters If we don't do that, they're going to continue doing the things that we don't want them to do. But unless we speak up as individuals, how can we make changes? We can't. So I feel very strongly that we as women voters can be very effective, but it's got to start from here, from yourself out. It's got to start from you speaking up. It's got to start from you writing letters. It's great that we had 8 responses, but you know, you had 200-something members before. You should have had more responses. So what does that show? It shows that we are not doing what we profess and practice. You know, we're not practicing it. And so I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking, why didn't more women come to this meeting? We have a good showing now and it's okay. But you know, this is the time. If we want to see, if we're not happy with what's happening, then we've got to do something about it. We can't just sit on our hands and not do anything about it. We've got to do it. If we're not happy with our leadership, make changes. But we've got to vote. And that's what the League of Women Voters is all about, is to get the people out there to vote, but not just haphazardly. They've got to know what they're voting for and who they're voting for and why they're voting. And this is where education comes in. And I think that we can do it. I see positiveness in the future. In Chinese, this is the year of the boar, which means many changes, and we're going to make positive changes, and we can. And that's how I feel.
Thank you. Dorothy.
Well, you know, Lavonne sees one way, Rozita sees another. I see mixed. How's that? I truly do, but I do see a role for the League. I do back to basics kind of thing where we have to make sure that people are registered, that we educate them about the ballot issues, because that's one thing that I know that the League did have stands and did have explanations of the ballot issues, but no one read it because all the nonprofit agencies are saying, my God, we didn't know we voted for that, and the League could have told them what they were voting for. So that there is a real role out there. I see our children, our daughters and sons have been brought up differently. I don't think that they can change some of the gains that have been made and some of the things that we have. And we have to build on that. I hate the idea that public service is a dirty word. I hate the idea that volunteerism is thrown around as volunteers are going to solve the problems of the world, and volunteers and the private sector is going to take up the arts and public television and everything else. It's just, that part is very, very destructive and very dissatisfying for us. But I want to leave you with something, and that is that, you know, when you see a turtle sitting on the top of a fence post, you know they had help getting there. And I think the League was that help, and I think that we can give this to our families too. And while I really look around and see young people, and it's just wonderful to see so many young people involved, we're passing it along to you. We'll help you up there now, and you can get on with it, but we'll still stay there, because I don't think any of us who are active can really completely retire, and we'll just have to keep trying.
Sandy.
I work with about 1,500 young teenagers every day, and I would have to tell you I have great hope for the future. There are lots of really good, really smart kids out there. I would also say that we have to do more for the girls, particularly young teenage girls, and make them more aware of their opportunities. I see some regression as far as what they feel they can do and be. I know that there are organizations in town, I think one's coming up here in March, going to do math and science for girls. If you have daughters or granddaughters, talk to them about these things. I can't stress enough that we can't let these kids go. We have to get to them. We have to convince the girls that they can do and be all that they set their goals to. And sometimes I hear a real defeatist attitude. And I would like to do a little advertising, if I may, for the League. We'd love to have you join us. The League is only as strong as you make it, and we have issues from Tahoe to consolidation that's been revisited time and time again. You can see the chuckles among people who worked on it before. We've been doing health care. All of these things need your help. And some of us, like Dorothy said, will always be around, but we need lots of new blood. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue.
Let me just wrap this up by saying, and sort of reminiscing in conclusion, my dad was a naturalized citizen, and so I too am a first-generation American. And it's interesting that others would comment on that, because my father, of course, was Italian, and as you can tell from my name, wanted a boy. But nevertheless, there are two things that my parents really stressed to me. One, that I would have an education, and two, that I could do anything or be anything. And I was one of the lucky ones that heard that. That is the message that I carry to every youth group that I speak to. I never fail to tell them that, and I think it's really important to continue to stress that message. I am very optimistic, even though I think in the short term we are in for some hard times. But nevertheless, what all of this is about to me is choices, options, and opportunities. And I think that what we all must stand committed to is to make certain that there are choices, options, and opportunities out there for people, etc. It's interesting because someone once said that 1992 was the year of the woman in electoral politics, and I read the other day that 1994 was the year of the white angry male. And so, but I am optimistic again as far as what the future might be, because I honestly believe, and I think someone else said it, that there is no going back. I mean, once you have done certain things, once you've experienced certain things, I don't think that any of us here would ever tolerate going back to the way things were before. And so I think that that is a very positive thing for us. I said earlier to you that I think that you have to stand up for justice. And one of the sad things I see in our country right now is that we seem to have lost the ability to disagree with one another without somebody making it personal. You know, and it's just someone has to get right in your face, you know, or worse yet, accuse you of ethical wrongdoing or some sort of misconduct if you disagree with someone. That is not helpful. The other thing that and Dee Dee Myers was great. Those of you who saw her on this campus last night, she was terrific. And she hit the media a little bit, and I thought deservedly so. Because another sad part about life as we know it is that it has become sport and entertainment to get people. And that is not healthy. Someone once said that democracy is not a spectator sport. And, you know, you can't ever forget that, because our form of government requires participation. And the most basic level of participation is encouraging people and showing them how to be involved in the process, i.e. starting with the voting, and hopefully even encouraging them to run for office themselves or supporting people who are running for office and the like. But I am very optimistic, and part of it's always been my youth, in the sense that I always felt too that if nothing else I would outlive some of these things, and I'm still sort of in that phase. I mean, we'll see how I am 30, 40 years down the road. But let me conclude with a quote that I think is sort of appropriate for the evening, and it is that this is part of the Nike ad, and I think they've done some great advertisements lately, and it is that a woman is often measured by the things she cannot control. She is measured by the way her body curves or doesn't curve, by where she is flat or straight or round. She is measured by 36, 24, 36, and inches and ages and numbers, by all the outside things that don't ever add up to who she is on the inside. And so if a woman is to be measured, let her be measured by the things she can control. By who she is and who she is trying to become. Because as every woman knows, measurements are only statistics, and statistics lie. The process of who we are trying to become is never ending. And in the end, what the League does, what people who volunteer, what people who give back to their community do is very important, because in the end, this community, any community, this state, and indeed our nation will be what we make it.
It looks to me like one of the things we're talking about here is examining the rugged individualism that we've been so proud of for so many years, and wondering if we shouldn't move from I to we a lot more than we have in recent times. That it's community that really is where we're going to make a difference. And groups like the League of Women Voters will continue to be needed to see that community happens and that we all work together on that. I think what we're talking about here tonight is each of us pondering what it means to us to have the right to vote, and what are we doing with it now? What can we do with it in the future, male and female, working together toward the community that we all want. We'd like to thank all of you for coming. I know that we could have everyone in the room has things to share. Maybe some of us can stay around a little bit longer and talk and enjoy each other. I would like to particularly thank Joanne Goodwin from the History Department. Joanne, would you rise? And Martin Johnson from the History Department. And Ellen Rose from Women's Studies. And end by having all the members of the League stand up here all over the community, and really thank you. It's been a wonderful 75 years. Let's plan for the next 75. Everybody gather together and enjoy. Thank you very much for coming. Oh, I was going to mention you.